Marcus Davidson stood at the floor-to-ceiling windows of his Newport Beach villa, absently swirling a glass of 30-year-old scotch as he watched the Pacific waves crash against the private shoreline below. The sun was setting, painting the sky in brilliant oranges and pinks that would have taken his breath away 15 years ago. Now, like everything else in his life, it was just another beautiful thing he owned but couldn't truly appreciate. The sound of his Italian leather shoes echoing against marble floors filled the empty space as he paced the great room. 48 years old, billions in the bank, and what did he have to show for it? A string of failed relationships, an empire built on ruthless dedication, and a house so vast it made his footsteps sound lonely. His phone buzzed. Probably Sandra, his assistant, with another crisis that needed his immediate attention. Marcus reached for it with practiced weariness, but the message wasn't from Sandra. Unknown number. "We need to talk. We'll be at your villa in 20 minutes. It's about your past and your future." Marcus's hand tightened around the phone. In his position, mysterious messages usually meant attempted blackmail or desperate pitches from people trying to get a piece of his fortune. He should ignore it. Call security. But something in the words made his chest tighten. Your past and your future. He took another sip of scotch, larger this time. The liquid burned down his throat as memories he'd buried long ago began to surface. Sarah from college. Rebecca during his startup days. Catherine when Davidson Tech was just taking off. All the women he'd left behind while climbing to the top. The security system chimed, announcing visitors at the gate. Marcus pulled up the camera feed on his phone. Two young men stood there, mid-20s he'd guess. Even through the grainy security footage, he could see they carried themselves with a confident purpose that made his skin prickle. The taller one looked up directly at the camera, and Marcus nearly dropped his phone. He was staring at his own eyes from 25 years ago. Marcus's finger hovered over the intercom button. He could turn them away. Go back to his empire of glass and steel and carefully managed solitude. But those eyes. He pressed the button. Come up to the house. The gates swung open silently. Marcus watched the two figures make their way up the winding driveway, their long shadows stretching out behind them in the fading sunlight. His heart was pounding now, a feeling he hadn't experienced since his early days of pitching to venture capitalists. He heard their footsteps on the portico, then the doorbell's deep toll reverberating through the villa. Marcus took one last look at his reflection in the window. Perfect suit, perfect hair, perfect mask of control. But his hands were shaking as he walked to the door. The moment he opened it, his carefully constructed world began to crack. The young man with his eyes spoke first. "Hello, Mr. Davidson. My name is James Chin. This is my half-brother, Michael Torres. And we're your sons." Silence filled the vast entryway, broken only by the gentle bubbling of the ornate water feature behind them. Marcus's grip tightened on the door handle as he studied the young men before him. James, with his steel blue eyes, Marcus's eyes, carried himself with the same rigid posture Marcus had cultivated during his rise to success. Michael was shorter, with warm brown eyes and an angular face that stirred forgotten memories of a passionate weekend in Miami 15 years ago. "This is impossible," Marcus finally said, but even as the words left his mouth, he knew they were a lie. The timing fit. The resemblance was undeniable. And deep down he'd always known his past would catch up with him eventually. "May we come in?" James asked, his tone professionally neutral but with an undercurrent of challenge that Marcus recognized from his own business dealings. "This isn't a conversation we should have on your doorstep." Marcus stepped aside, watching as his newly discovered sons entered his home. Their shoes clicked against the marble floors, expensive but not ostentatious, he noted automatically, cataloging details like he would with potential business partners. "Nice place," Michael said, his eyes taking in the soaring ceilings and modern art pieces. "Though I expected more family photos." The slight edge in his voice made Marcus wince internally. They followed him to the great room, where the sunset had deepened to purple through the wall of windows. Marcus gestured to the Italian leather sectional but remained standing himself, needing the psychological advantage of height. "How did you find me?" he asked, though what he really meant was, "Why now?" James reached into his messenger bag, Salvatore Ferragamo, last season's collection, and pulled out two folders. "Our mothers never told us about you," he said, placing the folders on the glass coffee table. "They wanted us to have normal lives away from—" He gestured at the opulent surroundings, "all this. But they couldn't hide everything," Michael continued, leaning forward. "I found old photos of my mom at tech conferences in the early days of Davidson Tech." James discovered his mom's old journals. "We connected the dots. And then we connected with each other," James added. Through a DNA ancestry website. Imagine my surprise when I found out I had a half-brother, and that my father was Marcus Davidson, tech billionaire and America's most eligible bachelor. The last words carried a bitterness that made Marcus's chest tighten. What do you want? Marcus asked, falling back on familiar territory, negotiation. Money? Shares in the company? The brothers exchanged a look that made Marcus feel like he'd already failed some crucial test. James stood up, his height matching Marcus's own, and for the first time, real emotion cracked through his professional veneer. What we want, he said, his voice slightly unsteady, is to understand why you left. Why you never looked back. Why you built all this, he gestured around the room, but couldn't spare a thought for your own children. We want to know, Michael added quietly, if the great Marcus Davidson has any room in his perfect life for two sons he never knew he had. Marcus turned away, facing the darkening ocean. His empire had been built on quick decisions, on never second-guessing himself. But now, faced with the consequences of his past choices, he felt something he hadn't experienced in decades: uncertainty. Behind him he heard one of the brothers, James, he thought, shift on the leather sofa. We're not here to ruin you, James said. We both have our own careers, our own lives. But we've spent our whole lives with this void. And we think maybe you have too, even if you don't know it. Marcus closed his eyes, remembering the empty echoes of his footsteps just an hour ago, the hollow victory of another record quarter, the growing realization that all his wealth meant nothing without someone to share it with. When he turned back to face them, his carefully maintained mask had slipped, revealing something raw and vulnerable beneath. Stay for dinner, he said softly. Tell me about yourselves. About your mothers. About. He swallowed hard. About the lives I should have been part of. The brothers shared another look, years of unspoken understanding passing between them. Finally Michael nodded. We'd like that, he said. Dad. The word hung in the air between them, heavy with both promise and accusation. As Marcus reached for his phone to call his personal chef, his hand was shaking again, but this time not from fear. From possibility. The private chef worked silently in the gourmet kitchen while Marcus and his son sat in the adjacent dining room, the space between them filled with awkward pauses and careful words. The massive crystal chandelier cast intricate shadows across the hand-carved mahogany table, its light reflecting off the vintage wine in their glasses. Sarah was brilliant, Marcus said softly, looking at James. The smartest person in every room. She could see patterns in code that nobody else could spot. I always thought she'd be the one to. He trailed off, taking a sip of wine to hide his discomfort. To what? James pressed. To stick around? To make you settle down? His fingers drummed against the table, a nervous habit that reminded Marcus of himself during board meetings. Mom never blamed you, Michael interjected, his gentler tone a stark contrast to his brother's intensity. She said you were both young, both focused on your careers. But sometimes late at night I'd catch her looking at old tech magazines with your face on the cover. Marcus felt the weight of missed opportunities pressing down on him. Catherine, your mother, she was extraordinary too. She had this laugh that could fill a room. She believed in me when Davidson Tech was nothing but a dream and a few lines of code. Did you love them? James asked abruptly. The question hung in the air like smoke. Marcus stared into his wine glass, watching the liquid catch the light. I thought I loved my work more, he finally answered. I was wrong. The chef appeared with their first course, perfectly seared scallops on beds of cauliflower puree. The artistic plating seemed suddenly pretentious in the face of their raw conversation. You know what's ironic? Michael said, pushing a scallop around his plate. We both ended up in tech just like you. Different companies, different paths, but the same world. James is a security systems architect, and I'm developing AI algorithms for medical diagnosis. Marcus looked up sharply. Medical AI? Are you working with neural network pattern recognition? Don't, James cut in before Michael could respond. Don't try to make this about business. We're not here for a networking opportunity. Marcus set down his fork, the silver making a soft clink against fine china. You're right. I'm sorry. Old habits. He took a deep breath. Tell me about your lives. Your childhood. What you like, what you hate. Who you are. And slowly, over perfectly prepared courses and carefully selected wines, his sons began to share their stories. James talked about his competitive swimming years in high school, how he'd pushed himself to beat every record. Michael described his passion for classical piano, how music helped him think through complex coding problems. With each story, each revealed memory, Marcus felt the weight of everything he'd missed. First steps, school plays, graduations, award ceremonies, all sacrificed on the altar of his ambition. "I have a daughter," James said quietly as the chef cleared their dessert plates. "She's 2. Her name is Emma." Marcus gripped the edge of the table, his knuckles white. "A granddaughter. Another life he knew nothing about. Would you?" He started, then had to clear his throat. "Would you show me a picture?" James hesitated, then pulled out his phone. The screen lit up with the image of a laughing toddler with their eyes, and dark curls like Sarah's. "She's beautiful," Marcus whispered, and for the first time in decades he felt tears threatening. "Dad." Michael's voice was tentative. "We're not asking you to make up for the past 25 years overnight. We know that's impossible. But maybe we can build something new. Something real." Marcus looked at his sons, really looked at them. At the men they'd become without him. At the pieces of himself and their mothers he could see in their faces. At the future they were offering him, if he was brave enough to take it. "I'd like that," he said. "More than anything." The evening light had faded entirely now, leaving them in the warm glow of the chandelier. Through the windows, stars were becoming visible over the ocean, and for the first time in years Marcus's villa didn't feel empty. If you're enjoying this video and want more content like this, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on the notification bell. That way you won't miss out on any of the amazing stories we have coming up. Your support really helps the channel grow and keeps us bringing you more of what you love. Thank you. The following week found Marcus standing in his home office, staring at his calendar displayed on 3 massive monitors. For the first time in his career, he was considering canceling board meetings and investor calls. His cursor hovered over appointments as memories of last night's dinner replayed in his mind. Sandra's voice crackled through the intercom. "Mr. Davidson, the Tokyo merger team is waiting for your video call." Marcus straightened his tie, a habit ingrained over decades. "Tell them I'll be 15 minutes late." He pulled out his phone, looking at the photo James had reluctantly shared with him. A group shot from Emma's 2nd birthday party last month. His granddaughter's face glowed with joy as she reached for cake, while James and his wife Jessica looked on laughing. A text message popped up from Michael. "Lunch today? There's something I need to discuss." Marcus's fingers moved swiftly across the screen. "Name the place." Then, after a moment's hesitation, he added, "Looking forward to it." 3 hours later, Marcus pulled his Aston Martin into the parking lot of a modest beachside cafe, the kind of place he would have never considered before. Michael was already there, sitting at an outdoor table, coding on a laptop. "This is where I do my best work," Michael said by way of greeting, gesturing at the ocean view. "Something about the waves helps me think clearly. Mom used to bring me to places like this when I was stuck on a coding problem." Marcus sat down, noting how his tailored suit stood out among the casual beach crowd. "Catherine always did love the ocean. She used to say it reminded her that some things were bigger than our ambitions." "That sounds like her," Michael smiled, then his expression grew serious. "Listen, I wanted to talk to you about something. I've been developing this medical AI system like I mentioned at dinner. It's showing incredible promise in early detection of rare diseases, but I'm hitting walls with funding and FDA approval processes." Marcus felt his business instincts kick in but remembered James's warning about making things transactional. He forced himself to stay quiet and listen. "I'm not asking for money," Michael continued quickly. "Or connections. I could use some advice. From someone who's navigated these waters before. He paused. "From my father." The words still felt new, precious and fragile. Marcus leaned forward, his food untouched. "Tell me everything. Start from the beginning." As Michael explained his project, his passion evident in every word, Marcus found himself deeply impressed. The algorithm was innovative, the potential impact tremendous. But more than that, he saw Catherine in every elegant line of code Michael described, in the way he focused on helping people rather than just making profit. "The truth is," Michael said, running a hand through his hair, "I've been approached by some major healthcare companies. They want to buy the technology outright. The money's good, life-changing good. But something about their terms feels off." Marcus nodded slowly. "Let me guess. Exclusive rights, restricted access, premium pricing model?" "Exactly. They'd make it available only to top-tier hospitals and private clinics. But I developed this to help everyone, not just the wealthy. Like your mother would have wanted," Marcus said softly. Their eyes met in understanding. For a moment they weren't CEO and developer or even father and son. They were just two men who had loved the same remarkable woman in different ways. What if, Marcus said carefully, we looked at alternative funding structures? Impact investing, healthcare-focused venture funds that prioritize accessibility? I might know some people. I thought you weren't supposed to make this about business, Michael said, but his tone was teasing rather than accusatory. Marcus smiled, feeling something shift between them. Maybe there's a middle ground, where being your father and being a business advisor aren't mutually exclusive. Michael closed his laptop, turning to face the ocean. James won't like it. He's protective of both of us. I've noticed, Marcus said dryly. He reminds me of myself at his age. Always waiting for the other shoe to drop, always looking for the angle. Can you blame him? No, Marcus admitted. I can't blame either of you for anything. But I'd like to prove him wrong. Prove that I can be here for you both without trying to buy my way into your lives. The waiter arrived with their meals, fish tacos for Michael, grilled salmon for Marcus. They ate in companionable silence, watching surfers ride the waves below. Dad, Michael said as they were finishing. The words sounded more natural this time. Thank you. For listening. For not trying to take over or throw money at the problem. Marcus felt warmth spread through his chest that had nothing to do with the afternoon sun. Thank you for giving me the chance to do it right this time. James paced his home office, phone pressed to his ear, trying to keep his voice down to avoid waking Emma. Michael, you can't be serious. He's already trying to get involved in your business? It's been a week. It's not like that, Michael's voice crackled through the speaker. I asked for his advice. He actually listened, James. No checkbook in sight. That's how it starts, James muttered, pausing to look at a photo of his mother on his desk. Sarah's smile seemed to challenge him, asking if he was being fair. Next thing you know, he'll be trying to buy his way into our lives just like he buys everything else. A soft knock at his office door made him turn. His wife Jessica stood there, concern etched on her face. She'd always been able to read his moods, even when he thought he was hiding them well. I've got to go, he told Michael. Just, be careful, okay? After hanging up, Jessica wrapped her arms around him from behind. You're doing it again, she said softly. Building walls before anyone even tries to climb them. I'm trying to protect us. Protect Emma. He turned in her embrace. You didn't grow up with the ghost of Marcus Davidson hanging over everything. The headlines about his latest acquisition, his newest mansion. Watching Mom pretend she didn't care when his wedding to that socialite made the news. And now? Now he wants to play daddy? Grandfather? After all these years? James pulled away, running his hands through his hair in frustration. Michael's already falling for it. Had lunch with him today, talking about his medical AI project. Jessica moved to perch on his desk, her expression thoughtful. Maybe that's not such a bad thing. Michael's brilliant, but he could use some guidance with the business side of his project. And from what you've told me, your father knows that world better than anyone. He's not my father, James said automatically, but the words felt hollow. He's just the man whose eyes you see every time you look in the mirror? Jessica finished gently. The man whose determination and drive you inherited? The man who, despite his flaws, gave me the husband I love and Emma the father she adores. James felt his defenses cracking. I'm nothing like him. Really? Jessica picked up a framed photo from his desk. James working on his laptop while Emma slept on his chest. Because I seem to remember someone else who was so focused on his career that he almost missed the important things in life. Someone who needed a certain persistent woman to remind him that success means nothing without family. The parallel hit home, making James sink into his office chair. That's different. I learned from my mistakes. I changed. Maybe he's trying to do the same. Jessica walked over and placed her hands on his shoulders. James, you've spent your whole life angry at him for not being there. Now he wants to be here and you're angry about that too. At some point you have to decide what you actually want. A small cry from down the hall interrupted them. Emma, probably having a bad dream. James stood automatically, parental instincts overriding everything else. Go, Jessica said softly. Be the father you wished you had. But remember, it's never too late to learn how to be a son. James found Emma standing in her crib, tears on her cheeks. Hey, princess, he whispered, lifting her into his arms. She immediately snuggled into his shoulder, her tiny hand gripping his shirt. As he swayed gently, humming the lullaby his mother used to sing, his phone buzzed. A text from Marcus. Would you and your family like to come over for dinner this weekend? There's someone I'd like Emma to meet. James looked down at his daughter, already drifting back to sleep in complete trust of her father's arms. He thought about second chances, about learning and growing, about the weight of both giving and withholding forgiveness. After a long moment he typed back, "What time?" Marcus spent 3 hours choosing the right gift. The luxury boutiques he usually frequented seemed wrong, too impersonal, too obviously expensive. Finally, in a small bookshop in Newport Beach, he found it, a vintage first edition of Goodnight Moon, its pages worn soft with decades of bedtime readings. Now, standing in his villa's entryway, he turned the book over in his hands, questioning every decision that had led to this moment. The security system chimed, announcing James's family's arrival. His first official dinner with his granddaughter. The front door opened to reveal Emma in Jessica's arms, the toddler's eyes wide as she took in the soaring ceilings and crystal chandelier. James followed, carrying a diaper bag and looking as uncertain as Marcus felt. "Welcome," Marcus said, the word feeling inadequate. I have something for Emma." He held out the book, suddenly aware of how old and plain it looked against the villa's luxury. But Emma's face lit up. "Moon," she exclaimed, reaching for the familiar cover. "It was your father's favorite when he was little," Sarah had told Marcus during their brief, tense phone call. He wouldn't sleep without it. James's sharp intake of breath told Marcus she'd been right. "You talked to Mom?" "I had to know," Marcus said quietly. "About the things I missed. The things that mattered." Before James could respond, Michael's car pulled up. He'd brought Catherine, his mother, at Marcus's invitation. The moment she stepped into the foyer, time seemed to fold in on itself. Catherine's hair was silver now, her face lined with years Marcus hadn't witnessed, but her eyes still held the same quiet strength he remembered. "Catherine," he managed. "Thank you for coming." She nodded, her gaze taking in the scene, James's guarded posture, Jessica's diplomatic smile, Emma clutching the old book. "Well," she said finally, "we're all here for the same reason. Family." The word hung in the air like a challenge and a possibility. Emma broke the tension, squirming to be put down. Once free, she toddled straight to Marcus, holding up the book. "Read?" Marcus looked helplessly at James and Jessica. "Is it okay if I?" Jessica smiled, genuine this time. "Of course. It is your job as grandpa after all." They moved to the living room, where Marcus had already arranged child-safe furniture and soft throws. He sat on the couch, and Emma climbed right up beside him, completely unencumbered by the weight of history that filled the room. "In the great green room," Marcus began, his voice rough with emotion, "there was a telephone and a red balloon." As he read, the others settled around them. Michael sat near Catherine, their shoulders touching in familiar comfort. James and Jessica took the love seat, their fingers intertwined. The story continued, each word a thread weaving them closer together. Good night stars, good night air, good night noises everywhere. Emma was drowsy by the end, her small body trustingly leaned against Marcus's side. He looked up to find James watching them, his expression complex. "You know," James said slowly, "I used to imagine this. When I was a kid. Having a father who'd read to me." "I'm sorry," Marcus said, the words feeling both enormous and insufficient. "I can't change the past, but I want to be here for her future. For all of your futures if you'll let me." Catherine spoke up from her corner. "The past shapes us, but it doesn't have to define us. Isn't that right, Michael?" Michael nodded, then pulled out his laptop. "Speaking of the future, Dad, I wanted to show you something. The medical AI project. We've made some breakthroughs." As Michael pulled up the data, Emma stirred and reached for James. The transfer from grandfather to father was awkward, unpracticed, but they managed it together. Just like they were managing everything else, one small, careful step at a time. The evening flowed into dinner, where the conversation gradually shifted from careful politeness to genuine interest. Catherine shared stories about Michael's first coding attempts. Jessica talked about how she and James met. Emma made everyone laugh by insisting on calling the elaborate pasta dish fancy sketty. Later, as the families prepared to leave, Emma gave Marcus a spontaneous hug around the knees. "Bye-bye, Grandpa. Read again?" Marcus felt tears threatening. "Anytime, sweetheart. Anytime." After they'd gone, Marcus stood in his suddenly quiet villa, holding the well-worn book. His phone buzzed, a group text from Michael suggesting a regular family dinner schedule. James's response came quickly, "We're free next Sunday." Marcus smiled, hope filling his chest. Sometimes the most precious gifts come in the simplest packages, like an old children's book and a second chance at family. If you're enjoying this video and want more content like this, Make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on the notification bell. That way you won't miss out on any of the amazing stories we have coming up. Your support really helps the channel grow and keeps us bringing you more of what you love. Thank you. The weekend dinner at Marcus's villa felt different this time. The formal dining room had been abandoned in favor of the more intimate kitchen patio, where the ocean breeze carried the scent of grilling steaks and fresh herbs from Marcus's rarely used garden. Emma's delighted squeals echoed across the property as she discovered the small playground equipment that had mysteriously appeared since their last visit. "You didn't have to do all this," James said, watching his daughter climb the carefully padded steps of a custom playhouse that probably cost more than his first car. Marcus stood at the grill, his usual tailored suit replaced by designer jeans and a casual button-down. "I know," he said quietly. "I wanted to. Though I should have asked first. Old habits, thinking I can solve everything by..." He gestured at the playground. "Throwing money at it?" James finished, but there was less edge to his words than before. "Something like that." Marcus flipped the stakes with surprising expertise. "Your mother, Sarah, she used to call me out on that all the time. Said I treated every problem like a hostile takeover waiting to happen." Michael emerged from the house carrying a tray of drinks, Jessica beside him with salad bowls. The casual domesticity of the scene felt surreal against the backdrop of the multi-million-dollar villa. "Emma," Jessica called, "come wash your hands for dinner, sweetie." "No," Emma declared, starting her first toddler rebellion from the top of the slide. "Playing." Marcus watched the negotiation unfold, a strange expression on his face. "I missed all this," he said, so softly James almost didn't hear him. "The little moments, the challenges, the joy of watching your child become their own person, even when that person is saying no to everything." James felt the familiar anger rise, but it was different now, tinged with something like pity. "Yeah, well, you made your choices." "I did," Marcus agreed, surprising James with his directness. "And I'll regret them for the rest of my life. But maybe..." He hesitated, checking the temperature of the steaks. "Maybe I can learn from them. Be better. If you'll let me." Emma's voice interrupted them. "Daddy. Watch me slide." Both men turned automatically before James realized Marcus had moved too. Their eyes met in understanding. Marcus hadn't been the one she was calling, but he'd responded instinctively anyway. "You know," Michael said, joining them by the grill, "I found Mom's old journals last week. She wrote about you, about those early days. She said you were different then, passionate about changing the world, not just conquering it." Marcus's hands stilled on the grill tongs. "Catherine always saw the best in me. Even when I couldn't see it myself." "The medical AI project?" Michael continued. "Those investors you suggested, the ones focused on accessibility and social impact? They want to meet next week. Said they were intrigued by the potential for global healthcare improvement." James shot Marcus a sharp look. "I thought you weren't getting involved in business matters." "He didn't," Michael said before Marcus could respond. "He just made some introductions. No strings, no pressure, no Davidson Tech involvement. Just a father helping his son find the right path." The sunset painted the ocean in shades of gold, casting long shadows across the patio. Emma had finally agreed to wash her hands and was now sitting in Jessica's lap, tiny fingers reaching for a cherry tomato from the salad. "You're not the man our mothers knew," James said suddenly. "But you're not exactly the man who built this empire either, are you?" Marcus plated the steaks, his movements deliberate. "I'm trying to figure out who I am now. Who I want to be. I spent so many years focused on legacy in terms of market share and stock prices. Never realized my real legacy was sitting in a college dorm room coding medical algorithms, or building security systems for Fortune 500 companies, or..." His voice softened as he watched Emma, sliding down a playground slide in my backyard. The evening air was cooling, prompting Jessica to wrap a light blanket around Emma's shoulders. The toddler's eyes were growing heavy, but she fought sleep with the determination that James recognized from his own mirror. "Dad," James said, testing the word consciously for the first time, "pass the salad?" The simple request carried the weight of an olive branch. Marcus handed over the bowl, and for a moment, their fingers brushed. 3 generations of Davidson determination connected by crystal salad bowl and tentative forgiveness. The Davidson Tech boardroom buzzed with tension as Marcus stood at the window, his back to the assembled executives. Behind him, the morning headlines glowed on every tablet and laptop screen. "Tech billionaire's secret sons revealed. Davidson dynasty takes unexpected turn." "The press is having a field day," Sandra said, sliding another tablet across the polished table. Social media is exploding. Our PR team is overwhelmed with interview requests. Marcus turned, his expression unreadable. Cancel them all. But sir, the shareholders. My family is not a PR opportunity, Marcus cut in, his voice carrying the steel edge that had made him famous in Silicon Valley. Draft a simple statement acknowledging that I have recently connected with my 2 adult sons. Nothing more. The boardroom erupted in protests about transparency, stock prices, and public image. Marcus let them talk, his mind drifting to last night's text from James. Emma asked when she can visit Grandpa again. His phone buzzed, Michael calling. Marcus did something he'd never done in 30 years of business. He walked out of a board meeting to take a personal call. The story's everywhere, Michael said without preamble. 3 reporters outside my apartment building. Mom's being hounded for interviews too. Marcus pressed his fingers to his temple. I'm sorry. I should have prepared you both for this. The media attention, the scrutiny. Hey, Michael interrupted, we're not exactly naive about how this works. James and I knew it would come out eventually. He paused, we wanted some time to figure out who we are as a family first. Family. The word still sent a jolt through Marcus's chest. Listen, Michael continued, I have that meeting with the healthcare investors today. Given all this. His voice trailed off. Do you want me to reschedule it? Actually, I was thinking, would you come with me? Not as Marcus Davidson, tech billionaire. Just as, my dad. Marcus felt his throat tighten. I'll be there, he managed. Text me the address. Back in the boardroom, the executives were still arguing about damage control. Marcus walked to the head of the table and pressed his palms flat against its surface. This company has weathered economic crashes, tech bubbles, and global pandemics, he said, his voice cutting through the chaos. It will survive its CEO having a family. Meeting adjourned. 2 hours later, Marcus sat in a sleek conference room in downtown San Francisco, watching his son pitch his medical AI project. Michael's passion radiated through every word, every gesture. He spoke about accessibility, about reaching underserved communities, about changing lives. The investors were captivated, but one silver-haired venture capitalist raised a challenging question. Impressive technology, but why not maximize profit potential? Partner with private healthcare providers, premium pricing model. Marcus felt his old instincts surge, the urge to dominate, to push for maximum returns. But before he could speak, Michael answered. Because that's not why I created this, he said firmly. This isn't about building another tech empire. It's about helping people who need it most. His eyes met Marcus's. Sometimes the most valuable legacy isn't the one that makes the most money. Pride swelled in Marcus's chest. Pride not in stock prices or market share, but in the man his son had become without him. Better than him in all the ways that mattered. After the meeting, they walked along the bay, both still processing the morning's media storm. They're going to fund it, Michael said, grinning. Full investment with the accessibility model intact. They'd be fools not to, Marcus replied. You were incredible in there. Thanks, Dad. Michael stopped walking, turning to face him. When James and I first found each other, when we decided to find you, we thought we were looking for answers about our past. But maybe we were really building something for our future. A text lit up both their phones simultaneously, James sharing a video of Emma proudly showing off her newly learned word, Grandpa. The little girl beamed at the camera, Marcus's eyes shining from her small face. Marcus watched the video 3 times before trusting himself to speak. I spent my life building things that seemed important at the time, he said finally. But this is what matters. The San Francisco fog rolled in from the bay, shrouding the city's towers in mist. Father and son stood in comfortable silence, watching boats drift past, each lost in thoughts of family, legacy, and second chances. The autumn sun streamed through the villa's windows as Marcus sorted through old photographs spread across his desk. Each image captured a moment of his rise to success. Award ceremonies, product launches, acquisition celebrations. But now they felt like artifacts from another life, one where he'd mistaken achievement for fulfillment. His phone chimed with a new message. Sarah, James's mother, had finally responded to his carefully worded email. Coffee tomorrow? There's a lot we should discuss. Marcus's hands trembled slightly as he typed his reply. After 25 years, he would face the first woman whose heart he'd broken in pursuit of his ambitions. A knock at his office door pulled him from his thoughts. James stood there, looking uncomfortable in the formal setting. Michael said you wanted to see us both, James said, entering as Michael appeared behind him. Marcus gestured to the chairs facing his desk. There's something I need to tell you. Both of you. He pulled out a thick folder emblazoned with the Davidson Tech logo. I'm stepping down as CEO. The silence that followed was deafening. What? Michael leaned forward. But Davidson Tech is your life. It was, Marcus corrected. For too long it was everything. And look what that cost me. He met each of his sons' eyes in turn. I'm not selling my shares or abandoning the company. But it's time for new leadership, someone who understands that success isn't just measured in dollar signs. James's expression was guarded. Why now? Because I don't want to waste any more time, Marcus said simply. I want to be there for Emma's preschool graduation. I want to see your medical AI project change lives, Michael. I want to be your father, not just your biological connection to wealth and power. The board will fight this, Michael pointed out. Let them, Marcus shrugged. I've spent my life fighting for things that didn't matter. Time to fight for something that does. James stood abruptly and walked to the window. Mom's coming to town next week, he said, his back to the room. She wants to meet Emma's grandpa. The word carried a mix of emotions, lingering resentment, cautious hope, reluctant acceptance. I know, Marcus said softly. She agreed to meet me for coffee tomorrow. Both sons turned to look at him, surprise evident on their faces. Are you sure you're ready for that? Michael asked. Marcus smiled wryly. No. But I owe both your mothers, more than just an apology. I owe them the truth about who I was then, and who I'm trying to become now. And who is that? James asked, his voice carrying an edge of challenge. Marcus stood, walking to a small safe hidden behind an abstract painting. He opened it and pulled out 2 envelopes, handing one to each of his sons. Open them, he said quietly. Inside each envelope was a letter, handwritten on Davidson Tech letterhead. As they read, their expressions shifted from skepticism to disbelief. You're transferring 40% of your Davidson Tech shares? Michael's voice cracked. Split between us? This isn't about buying your forgiveness, Marcus said quickly. It's about legacy, the real kind. The company's future should be shaped by men who understand that family and ethics matter more than profit margins. James stared at his letter, his hands shaking slightly. Does this mean? It means you both have seats on the board now, Marcus confirmed. Equal voices in the company's future. But more importantly, he swallowed hard, it means I trust you, both of you, with everything I've built. The afternoon light painted long shadows across the office floor as the 3 men sat in waited silence, the magnitude of the moment settling around them. Dad, Michael finally said, what do you want? It was such a simple question, but one Marcus had never really asked himself before. I want to be worthy of that word, he answered honestly. I want to be the father you deserved all along. I want to be a grandfather Emma can be proud of. I want the chance to put family first, finally. James walked back to his chair, sinking into it slowly. It won't be easy, he warned. There's still so much. I know, Marcus nodded. But for the first time in my life, I'm ready to do the hard work that really matters. If you're enjoying this video and want more content like this, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on the notification bell. That way you won't miss out on any of the amazing stories we have coming up. Your support really helps the channel grow and keeps us bringing you more of what you love. Thank you. 2 months later, Marcus's villa buzzed with life and laughter. Sounds that would have been unthinkable just months ago. The seaside garden, once merely decorative, now hosted a gathering that represented everything he'd gained by letting go of who he used to be. Emma chased Bubbles across the lawn while both her grandmothers, Sarah and Catherine, watched from comfortable chairs, sharing stories and occasional knowing looks. The women who had once been footnotes in Marcus's rise to power now sat in his home as family, their forgiveness harder won and more precious than any business deal he'd ever closed. James manned the grill, insisting on doing it himself despite the hired chef's availability, while Jessica set up a casual buffet of sides and salads. Michael showed his new fiancée Lisa around the property, their fingers intertwined as they walked along the private beach. Marcus stood back, taking in the scene. The morning papers had run stories about Davidson Tech's stock price dipping after his retirement announcement, but for the first time in his life, market fluctuations didn't consume his thoughts. His focus was on Emma's delighted squeals, on the way Sarah's eyes still crinkled when she laughed, on Catherine's gentle wisdom as she advised Michael about balancing work and personal life. Penny, for your thoughts? Sarah approached, holding out a glass of wine. They're worth considerably more than that, Marcus smiled, accepting the drink. I was just thinking about value. Real value. Finally learned that lesson, did you? There was no bitterness in her voice anymore, just a gentle understanding. Better late than never, he replied softly. Though I wish. Don't, Sarah cut him off. We can't change the past. But this. She gestured at their gathered family. This is a pretty good present. James called everyone to dinner and they gathered around the long table on the patio. Emma insisted on sitting between her Gramus, while Michael and Lisa shared their plans for a small wedding next spring. The conversation flowed easily, punctuated by laughter and the sound of waves breaking on the shore below. As the sun began to set, Marcus stood, gently tapping his glass. The chatter quieted as everyone turned to look at him. I've given a lot of speeches in my life, he began. Quarterly earnings calls, product launches, keynote addresses. But none of them matter as much as what I want to say right now. He paused, looking at each face around the table. Thank you. Thank you for giving me a chance I didn't deserve. Thank you for showing me that true wealth isn't measured in dollars or stock options, but in moments like this. Emma, not quite understanding but wanting to be part of the moment, raised her small glass of juice. Thank you, Grandpa. The simple words from his granddaughter's lips broke something open in Marcus's chest. You know, he continued, his voice rough with emotion, I spent decades building an empire of glass and steel, thinking that would be my legacy. But my real legacy is sitting at this table. It's in James's determination to be a better father than I was. It's in Michael's passion for using technology to help people, not just profit from them. It's in the forgiveness and grace of two extraordinary women who raised our sons to be better men than their father. Catherine raised her glass. To family, she said simply. To second chances, Sarah added. To learning what really matters, James concluded, holding his wife's hand. As the toasts rang out and the golden light painted everything in warm hues, Marcus finally understood. His greatest achievement wasn't the fortune he'd amassed or the company he'd built. It was this moment, this gathering, this family that had found their way to forgiveness and love despite the odds. The true measure of success isn't in the empire you build, but in the hearts you touch and the lives you enrich. Sometimes the most precious things in life come disguised as unexpected visits, uncomfortable truths, and the courage to admit when you've been wrong about what matters most. What did you think of this story of family, forgiveness, and second chances? Let us know in the comments below what touched you most about Marcus's journey with his sons. We love hearing your thoughts and experiences. If this story moved you, don't forget to hit that like button and share it with someone who might need a reminder that it's never too late to rebuild relationships. Make sure you're subscribed to our channel for more touching stories like this one, and hit that notification bell so you never miss an upload. Your support means the world to us, and every like, comment, and share helps us create more meaningful content that touches hearts. Until next time, remember that true wealth isn't measured in dollars, but in the love we share with family. Hey amazing viewers! If you enjoyed this story about family, redemption, and second chances, don't forget to show your support through Super Thanks. Your contribution helps us create more meaningful content that touches hearts and shares important life lessons. Thank you for being part of our journey.